Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Double Legendary Thursday. This is very likely the last video you will see of me in quite a while, because after tomorrow, I'm pretty sure I will be in jail. Because I will have looked into and then found the address, the location of where the brokers who handle the Great Vault live, and they will have gone there and beaten them half to death. So very likely I will be in jail after that. I'm pretty sure it's an understandable reaction if many of you are in the situation like mine, 3-4 consecutive resets without having offered a tier piece in the Great Vault. So it's a quite understandable feeling to have, which I am pretty sure I will pay with some jail time. So as for this last video of mine, I guess we will have to go over the big announcement from Blizzard. Because, yeah, it's not too much about the current in-game situation, but more so of what Blizzard said related to 9.3, the next patch of the expansion, etc, etc. Hold on a second. I thought this expansion was ending with 9.2. I mean, the story is over, right? The jailer has been defeated. We have seen that pathetic cutscene about the jailer's defeat. So the story is over. There's nothing more to do in the Shadowlands. We are going back. So what about this next patch? Blizzard announced that there is going to be a Shadowlands Season 4, okay? We are currently in Season 3, obviously. Season 1 was the start of the expansion with Castronatria and the Prideful affix. Season 2 was Sanctum of Domination raid with the Tormented affix, and now we are in Season 3 with Sepulchre and what's the name? Encrypted, right? They announced there is going to be a Season 4. Obviously, what we have been told, thought, and what we have seen over the years is that seasons are correlated with the new raid, the new zone, the new Mythic Plus season, right? That's how the seasons are intended in this game. Every time there is a big patch, the big patch of WoW usually has one raid, has usually, recently at the very least in the last few expansions, has one new zone to explore with the new faction, etc, etc, and then there is the new PvP season and the new Mythic Plus season. So they are announcing Season 4. Does this mean there is going to be a new raid? There is going to be new additions to Mythic Plus or to the open world, for example? That's where we start to branch from the current development cycle of the game, because even though we will still have a Season 4, it is going to be quite different than what we are used to in terms of seasons for the game. In the announcement set forth by Blizzard, they point out that later this year, after Season 3 has run its normal course, we are going to conclude, to end Season 3 and begin Shadowlands Season 4. A fresh take on what a season of WoW might include. So they go on to point out that while many aspects of a season are gonna stay the same, like new higher tier of PvP gear, new Mythic Plus gear, new season rewards, mounts, titles, etc, etc, those things are remaining roughly the same. They are announcing that the new things for Mythic Plus are that the dungeon pool of the Mythic Plus season, it is going to include 8 dungeons that are going to span the last 4 expansions of WoW. The 2 chosen dungeons for Shadowlands are the 2 newest ones, so Tazavesh, Streets of Wonder, and Solia's Gambit. Then they chose the mega dungeon of BFA as well. They chose Mechagon, the Junkyard and the Workshop, and then they also chose the mega dungeon of Legion, which is Karazhan, upper and lower. So we said 4 expansions, we just pointed out 3 of them. What's the 4th one? It's Warlords. The surprise of Warlords is that, unlike these other expansions and their mega dungeons, which Warlords doesn't have, there is going to be a poll. Blizzard is unironically going to leave it up to the community to vote on which of the 2 dungeons from Warlords of Draenor you will like to see included in the Season 4 of Mythic Plus of Shadowlands. We will get back to that in a bit. The surprises don't just end here, because on top of the change from Mythic Plus, there is also the addition of the change for the raid. Because of course, as I said, a new season usually usually precedes the arrival of a new raid, the new storyline, the campaign and whatnot. Is there going to be something like this as well in Season 4? No. Blizzard points out that for Season 4 raiding, they are going to be imagining adding a progenitor-themed affix system to infuse some new mechanical twists into Castonatria, Sanctum of Domination, and Sepulchre of the First Ones. Our intention here would be to make all 3 raids relevant in Season 4 at the same time, with increased difficulty and more powerful levels of raid loot dropping throughout all of them. So the concept of Blizzard is essentially a retooling, a reuse of older content for a patch, because as it stands, it is a new season, it is a new addition to the game, but there is nothing new in the sense that we are going backwards. We are taking dungeons from the older expansions and we are taking raids from the older tiers. The only new additions are going to be, let's just say, fine-tuned. There is going to be the new affix in Mythic Plus, or this new progenitor themed affix to put in the raid. So only tiny things. The rest is going to be old. And then I guess, sure, titles, mounts, achievements, those are going to be new as well. This is of course just good by default, simply because there is going to be more content. I doubt many players can debate whether or not having more content than having less is a bad thing, because even if you don't like this, you can just ignore this. The interesting thing is that we said that this expansion was going to stop in patch 9.2 as far as the big release of the patches go, and because of that we were expecting a very long intermission between this last patch and the next expansion. We looked at other phases that lasted very long, like the Siege of Orgrimmar raid patch in Mists, even the Dragon Soul patch in Cataclysm. Those lasted all at or around 1 year, some even more. There was the idea that once 9.2 came out, we would have seen the next expansion in like March or April of 2023. So this means a very, very long time with this last patch. So it is cool that we get something like this to I guess to split the length that we're gonna have to wait for the next expansion, to give you something different while you wait for the next expansion. Yes, the next expansion requires all of the focus of the development time, so you don't have time, you don't have the resources to add an extra season of the game with an entire new zone, a new storyline with new chapters and whatnot, an entire new set of dungeons, or a new raid developed all throughout. But you can start to retool your already existing assets, your already existing dungeons and raids, and give them essentially a remake, a makeover, give them a lift, and re-release them later in the final stretch of the expansion to freshen things up a bit and keep players, I guess, busy before the next expansion. This is the feeling I have gotten from this type of patch. You know, if this was a patch like the second patch of the expansion, I would have been much more confused. You know, if they would have released this instead of Sanctum, for example, if they would have retooled stuff from Warlords or Legion in the middle of the expansion. But for a patch at the end of the expansion, if you think about it, it makes sense, because the end of the expansion is always much longer than the patches in between. We can bring back up our graph of expansion releases, and you can see the duration of the last patches of the game compared to the duration of the normal 0.1, 0.2, or even 0.3 patches of the expansions. So it kind of would make sense if you were to split these last few tiers. You know, the tier from Wrath lasting a year, the tier from Mists lasting like 15 months, the tier from Legion even lasting a year. If you just split them with a minor extra patch, a minor extra season, there is nothing huge there. There is not a new entire raid, a new zone developed for the patch, but something that can keep you busy. So I think it makes sense if this type of patch is being thought of for the end of an expansion. I also think this is actually a test run, right? A test run from Blizzard to see how the community reacts to this type of patch by the end of an expansion, okay? It doesn't have to be so formal, it doesn't have to be so precise and so official with the new storyline and the new zone all tying together, leading you to the next raid. It could be something a little bit more informal, a little bit more laid back, like, hey guys, here's a bunch of older dungeons, here's an older raid, we changed a few things, I hope you enjoy. I think for an end phase of an expansion, that is a more acceptable, a cooler type of patch release that Blizzard could be thinking of. After all, Blizzard has, what, 20 plus years worth of content that they could go back and retool for the current version of the game. I know they have been very reluctant for whatever reason to do this. I know they have been, perhaps they think it's lazy, perhaps they think it's cheap, perhaps they think it doesn't bring enough attention or hype to the game, but I think many people would be kind of happy if Blizzard just randomly gave a makeover to all their expansions, to all their dungeons or raids, and brought them back in the current expansion pool of activities. For example, how many times, when is the last time you have tried a difficult progress of a dungeon like Grim Battle, right? What if Blizzard just brought back Grim Battle for the Season 4 of Shadowlands with updated mobs, updated damage and patterns of bosses, updated perhaps even the layout of the dungeon, and keep it very similar to what it was before? I don't think many people would complain that this is a reused tool, reused asset from an older part of the expansions of the game. You know, if the option is wait 6 months or 8 months in between patches to get no dungeons that are new and only update the affix of Mythic Plus, into take about the same time but add older expansion features to the new expansion, I don't see how much negativity there could be around this type of behavior from the developers of the game. Something like in between patch releases, you know, Blizzard pops up and goes, hey, we reimagined Onyxia as yet another reused raid boss. This time Onyxia ate too many magic mushrooms, so now she's turned into a poison dragon. There you go, have fun. How many people would complain that Onyxia is a reused tool of an older expansion if the option was to not have any new bosses, any new encounters for the several months that would have had you wait for the next patch? So I think retooling older assets, if done properly, is a pretty good help to keeping things refreshing and interesting in the game over time. Of course, it depends on which things you bring back, how long are they gonna stay, and how long it takes you to get to the actual new things, right? So that's why I think this patch is going to be some sort of a test run for the system. Just like I think, don't forget, the 9.2.5 patch, the one that is going to bring the cross-faction play, is also going to be a test run for the next expansion. So I like this approach that Blizzard is having towards the end of this expansion with these new bolder moves towards the content that they are adding in the game. And this, you know, this laid-back position by Blizzard is confirmed by the fact that they have added that there will not be a Hall of Fame for Season 4. We are not looking to position this as a competitive event. I'm sure players will try to do it by themselves, right? To be competitive anyways, but they're not basically making it official. They're not telling the player base that you have to do this just like you did in all the previous tiers, for example. So it's also, you know, reinforced by Blizzard that this attempt is a more laid back, a more chill release of a patch compared to the more, I guess, serious releases of the 0.1 and 0.2 patches we have had so far. Now, before we end, we have to go back to what I pointed out at the start, which was the voting being left to the player base to choose the 2 dungeons of Worlds of Draenor that will be added to the pool of Mythic Plus dungeons for Season 4. So, we have an interesting unity of mind between both NA and EU. The voting is separate depending on the region. So what we see at the start is that the clear winners at the moment are Grimrail Depot and Iron Docks. So, orcs, right? We're getting some orc dungeons, pretty much. It's interesting that both of them, you know, they have some unique, somewhat mechanics being added, right? Because Iron Docks has the whole skip, and even the last boss is somewhat unique. And then you have Grimrail Depot, of course, which is the more unique of them, out of all of them. It's also going to be interesting to see any of these dungeons being tuned for Mythic Plus, because of course, Warlords did not have Mythic Plus. The bosses, the mobs, the count of the mobs, the pathing, the routes of the dungeons themselves were not tuned even remotely close to be around Mythic Plus. So it will require some tuning as well. What I am more interested is in the other votes. We do know that the Slag Mines as well as the Shadowmoon Burial Grounds are both also considered the worst dungeons to have added into the pool Honestly, I am more surprised by the... I'm more disappointed by the enjoyment of my fellow EU players of Everbloom. I will personally hunt every single one of you who voted Everbloom if it ends up being added into the pool. I don't want to do that dungeon again. I don't want to see people fail the jump skips anytime soon. So please stop voting for Everbloom. Personally, my favorite dungeons I would have liked to see in the Mythic Plus pool of Season 4 were Oakindon, and either Skyreach or Upper Blackrock Spire. Oakindon, I just like the theme. I really like the older Draenei theme around Oakindon, and the fact that it has perhaps the more Mythic Plus-esque bosses that you could have. The downside of Oakindon is that it is very on rails, so there is not going to be many options basically for pathing and for routes in Oakindon. It's pretty much straightforward. Granted, many of these dungeons are, because Blizzard wasn't developing in them with Mythic Plus in mind, but Oakindon in particular is quite straightforward. So this is the voting, which by the way is going to end next reset. Basically, by the time this first reset of the double legendary is over, the voting is also going to be closed for the choice of the Warlords dungeons to be added in Season 4. So with this, we have also closed all of the news for this Thursday. Besides the very sad news of the lack of tier set for myself, the rest of the news are pretty positive. It is certainly better to have an additional patch by the end of this expansion rather than having none, especially if we consider once again the very likely long duration that this last patch would have had otherwise. As I said, there might have been some extra interest for you in this patch because of the addition of the cross faction play. But even then, the content would have been old anyways, so cross-faction play would have been weathered down a little bit. Instead, now we are getting cross-faction play, and then we are getting a new season of Mythic Plus and of new raids, or rather older retooled raids. So perhaps even the cross-faction play will see, an even better situation, an even better place to be in, given the increased interest of the player base to get into this new season. So pretty good news overall, pretty exciting news as we wait for the future. Of course, this is going to be quite later on. As I said, given the length that this patch is supposed to have, this is probably going to be some 5 to 6 months away, more or less at minimum. So it's gonna be a while before we see any more of this. For now, we can stop here. Thank you guys, of course, for watching the video, for supporting me and this channel. You can also comment and like on this video down below, because that's what YouTube told me viewers need to do. And well as, of course, you can also subscribe to the channel. But for today, of course, given the nature of this video, the subscription button has been left open and unlocked to everyone who has not been a degenerate and voted Everbloom to be added in the pool of Mythic Plus Dungeons for Season 4. And then you can also, of course, follow me up on Twitter over here, and support me on Patreon if you have dementia or perhaps Alzheimer's and you don't understand really what you're doing over here. Thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon. And in the meantime, there is still some hope. I have yet to re-clear heroic and normal for the tier set this evening, so perhaps I'm getting bailed out last minute. But still, fuck you, Great Vault. God damn.